Good morning. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope that your Wednesday is off to a good start. My day is looking pretty good so far. Excuse me a second. Let me adjust things. Yeah, that's better. Anyway, I hope that your Wednesday's off to a good start. You've got a second cup of coffee with you. Normally, when I'm here on Wednesday mornings with my cup of coffee, I'm talking about some book of the Bible or something theological or biblical. Now today's going to be personal. I guess like most of y'all, we've all heard about the missionaries that were kidnapped in Haiti over the weekend. 17 of them, 16 Americans and one Canadian that were down there, and apparently they've been there for some time. They are from a Christian aid organization based out of Ohio. I heard about it, I guess, Saturday night maybe, and we mentioned them in church on Sunday here in my little corner of the kingdom. And then Sunday night, Elizabeth asked me where this group had been kidnapped, and I said I don't know. So I looked it up. So I dug through an article, found an article about it on the BBC, and saw that they'd been taken from a region known as Quadrubuque, which is just east of the capital city of Port-au-Prince. And then I got to thinking, and I went back and looked, and I had stayed in Quadrubuque 7 years ago. I did a mission trip to Haiti 7 years ago, in February of 2014, and the little place we stayed was in Quadrubuque. And I realized Sunday night that area where we had stayed is now controlled by this gang, the 400 Mawazo, I guess that's how you pronounce it, which made it just so personal. That's where we stayed. That's where we stayed. And I couldn't help but just remember back to when I went down there. I remember being a little apprehensive getting on the plane, flying out of Raleigh, or Greenville, South Carolina, I guess. I remember being apprehensive getting on the plane to go down there, and then the plane comes down out of the clouds, and I looked down, and looking at Haiti was like looking at the surface of the moon. It was just surreal just how bare it was. Rugged and mountainous and just bare. Like I said, it's like looking at the landscape of the moon. And then we touched down at the airport in Port-au-Prince and walked out of the airport. And, we've all heard the expression, oh, we're not in Kansas anymore. I knew I definitely wasn't in Kansas anymore. And so we ride in the back of this truck. Our transportation was the back of a flatbed truck, and we rode from there out to the place where we were staying in Quadrubuque, and like people everywhere, very high population density, particularly around Port-au-Prince and its suburbs, and just people everywhere, and people on the streets, and just lined up along the street. We go to a flea market on a Saturday and people are selling used this and used that, and old shampoo and soap and whatever. And it's like that all the way down the street. Little people selling people like whatever they've got that they can sell to make $1 or two, and a lot of tiny little shops that are no bigger than a big bathroom, selling cheap cell phones and cheap electronic stuff. Um, tap taps, as they call them down there, which are it's a mode of transportation. A tap would be a small bus or a big pickup truck painted really brightly with like religious slogans on them, and people crammed into those things, roaring all over the place. The streets crowded with tap taps and private cars and trucks, and everybody going every which way without any thought to what we might call traffic laws or rules of the road. They just went. Come to an intersection, you don't stop, you just blow your horn and drive through it. We're just totally different culture. And Haiti is if you're not familiar with it, Haiti is a tragic country. Haiti has the distinction of being born of the only successful slave revolt in the Western Hemisphere. Beginning in the mid-1790s, the slaves in Haiti rose up against the French landowners. Haiti was colonized by the French, and succeeded in winning their independence in 1804, because this was a nation born of a slave revolt. They became sort of an international pariah, because in 1804 most places still practiced race-based slavery. So they were persona non grata internationally, because if you're in the U.S., you don't like them because you don't want the slaves in the U.S. to think they could rise up and revolt. Other European nations don't want to have anything to do with them. Haiti has pretty much no history of stable government. They have no history of effective, stable government. The stablest governments they've had are probably in the, 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, under a dictatorship. Papa Doc Duvalier and then Junior, Baby Doc as they called him, who were basically dictators. In the early years of the 20th century, the U.S. effectively controlled Haiti. Woodrow Wilson sent the Marines in 1915, 16, something like that. And for almost 20 years, the U.S. effectively controlled the country. Wilson sent the Marines in because there was just so much chaos there. And Franklin Roosevelt pulled them out in the early 30s. I referred to Haiti. When you come down out of the clouds in the plane, you look at it and it looks like the surface of the moon. Haiti has extreme deforestation. If you look at it sometime on Google Earth, if you look on Google Earth, Haiti is the western half of the island of Hispaniola. The eastern half is the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic is in the eastern half. It is Spanish-speaking. Haiti is the western half. It's French-speaking. And you look at it on Google Earth. The Dominican Republic is green. Haiti is brown because there's so few trees there. Some of the trees were cleared off by the French in the colonial era for shipbuilding, and then in the 1800s, the Haitians cut down enormous amounts of timber and gave it to the French as sort of in payment for their freedom. You add to that sort of unwise agricultural practices. And today, what do Haitians cook with? The vast majority of Haitians cook with charcoal, homemade charcoal, which is from trees. So extreme deforestation, um, poverty, just unspeakable poverty. At the time that I went to Haiti in 2014, it was the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and it's certainly no better off now than it was then, and one of the poorest in the world. Very little industry. Up until 1991, virtually all baseballs are manufactured in Haiti. If you've got an older baseball, somewhere stamped on it, it'll say made in Haiti. In 90 or 91, the baseball manufacturers moved their facilities out of the country, so they're made elsewhere in Central America. They moved out because political instability. And there goes one industry. In the mid-90s, the U.S. began sending in huge amounts of rice to Haiti. Some of it free, some of it sold at extraordinarily cheap prices. And this was, I think, done well and well-intentioned. We've got Haitians down there that are hungry, and the U.S. is producing a ton of rice, and our rice farmers are subsidized by the government, and so we start sending enormous amounts of rice down there, and in the process we killed the Haitian rice economy. So the rice production, which could be ordinarily an industry, we effectively killed in the 90s. It's a tragic, tragic country. 2010, January of 2010, it was hit by an earthquake. Earthquake struck that killed 200,000 people, magnitude 7. Then in July of this year, the president was assassinated. 1 month later, 14th of August, another earthquake hit, magnitude 7.2, and then 2 days later, a tropical storm. And that is Haiti. At the time that we were there in 2014, it was poverty-stricken, and it was unstable, and it's even worse now. And I can see where somebody might want to refer to it as, well, that's just a little banana republic. That's just another one of those little banana republics. And I understand that, but I can't go there because it's personal. It's personal. I've been there, and it's a country that has been beset by more tragedy than any 3 countries ought to ever have to live through. And in that 2 weeks or so that I was there, encountered just beautiful people. Just beautiful people. It was a wonderful trip. Now, I wouldn't go back down there right now. No, not unless I'm riding in a tank. I wouldn't go back down there right now, but I wouldn't rule out going back down at some point again. And that's the tragedy of it. The country is right now apparently what government it has is so ineffective. Another president was just assassinated 3 months ago. Significant portions of the country are ruled by gangs. You can't send missionaries down there. So, like, you can't donate money to a missionary organization to help because no non-governmental no NGO, non-government organization in their right mind is going to send anybody down there. With a government that is so weak right now, who do you give the money to? It is a tragic little country. There's part of me that says that the U.S. ought to send in the Marines, send in a brigade of Marines and clean it up. But when I think about it rationally, I understand that would probably do more harm than good long term. It wouldn't help long term, but there's, in my gut, that's what I wish we'd do, even though I know that it probably wouldn't solve anything. But I pray for Haiti. Pray for that little country. We have, around here, we have so many people that are sick, and we all know of friends or relatives who are sick, who have suffered. But add to your list of people of Haiti. And if you ever have the chance to go down there on a mission trip or otherwise, when things are safer, do it. You become really aware of what are first world problems in a hurry. But pray for Haiti. It's a tragic, tragic country. And when you hear about or read about large numbers of Haitians coming to our southern border, you'll understand why. If we begin to see large numbers of Haitians trying to reach Florida in small boats, you'll understand why. There's nothing there. Precious little economy, portions of the country ruled by gangs, government that is weak and ineffective at best, disease, not to say how we handle Haitians that get to our southern border or that try to get to Florida, but we can understand why. So anyway, pray for Haiti. It's not a banana republic. It's a tragic little country with a tragic history full of some really beautiful people. So that is your good word on Wednesday morning. Have a great day.